In this series of videos, you're going to learn how to do a bead looming project. The first step is to set up your loom. So here you can see I have a loom and I have my thread, and you're also going to need some scissors for this step. Now, your thread is going to need to be the entire length of your loom. The easiest thing to do, in my opinion, is just to drape it over the top, let a little bit hang off either side. So when I have some that hangs off of this end, I can just take my scissors and cut. The number of threads you need is determined by your bead design. I have my design right here, and my design is 5 beads of cross. The number of threads you need to cut is the number of beads in your design plus 1. So if I have 5 beads in my design, I need 6 threads. So I have 1 here, and I'm going to cut 6 more. So 2, 3. Don't worry about them being exactly the same length. Close enough is good in this case. 4, 5, and 6. So I have my 6 threads, and I'm going to take them and gather them all together, get the lengths at the top to just kind of line up together. So I'm just kind of trying to get the tops all in the same place. And 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, got them. Then I gather them all together here, and I'm going to wrap that gathering around my finger, tuck the tails back into the loop I made, and pull a knot tight. See, that knot is fairly close to the end. Then I'm going to pull the length of my threads until I reach the bottom, and I can see I've got a couple longer threads, but they all end right here at least. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same thing. I'm going to take the threads, wrap around my finger, but don't pull tight yet because this next part that I talk about is very, very important. So I need to make sure that all of my threads have the same tightness. So instead of pulling these short tails, I need to pull from the long tail, and I'm going to pull from this very end here to pull tight so that all of my threads have the same tightness here. They're all pulled tight. Then I'm going to take my loom and I'm going to separate out my threads so that I've got 3 on each side, and I'm going to hook 1 knot over the nail in my wooden dowel, like so. Now, I can see here I've got extra hanging off. That's good. That's what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this wing nut here on my dowel. I'm going to loosen it so that my dowel is able to turn on my loom. So it can turn like this, and you can see now that nail is facing downward. And I'm going to tighten my wing nut so the dowel stays in place. And then I'm going to turn my loom to the other side. I'm going to separate out half my threads onto either side here as well, just like I did before. And I need to hook that knot over my nail as well. And then I'm going to loosen this wing nut, and I am going to turn my dowel until my threads are tight. Okay, until my threads are tight. So it's okay that it's wrapped around multiple times here. That is totally and completely fine. Okay, last step on getting these threads in place, which by the way are called warp threads, is I need to separate out the threads. So I have 6 threads here, and each thread is going to fit into one of the spaces in my spring. So I'm going to loosen my dowel a tiny bit so it's easier to separate them. I put the first one off to the side, and I want them to be roughly parallel. They don't have to be perfect, but roughly parallel. I grab the second thread, and it goes into the slot right next to the first. Grab the third thread. That goes, you guessed it, in the third slot. Fourth thread in the fourth slot. Fifth in the fifth. And sixth in the sixth. So I'm just separating them out. If you're having a hard time getting them to stay in their slots, just tighten up the dowel a little bit. Tighten up your dowel. Almost lined up here. Okay, and then my last step is to tighten my dowel. Maybe I tighten both ends a little bit, and I'm just going to make sure my wing nuts are screwed in tight so that my warp threads here are nice and tight. See how when I tap there's not a ton of give? That is what you are looking for. Last step to setting up your loom is you're going to take more thread, and you want to measure about an arm length. So I start by holding the thread in my fingers, like so, and I'm going to pull the thread all the way up my arm, hold my arm straight out, and I pull the thread to my chest, and then I will cut. This is not going to be enough thread for the whole bracelet. I will teach you how to add more thread later, but you don't want to be working with too much thread at once because it can get pretty frustrating. Then what you're going to do, you're going to turn your loom so that the side, the dowel with less thread on it, you see how this dowel does not have thread wrapped all the way around. You want the dowel with less thread to be at the top. You're going to take the long thread you just cut. You're going to pass it on the inside of that leftmost warp thread, and you are simply going to tie a knot with that thread at the top. I like to leave a little bit of a tail. So I'm simply making a loop with my finger, pulling that tail through, pulling tight, and then I do that one more time, make a loop, pass the tail through, pull tight, and you are ready to start weaving. Stay tuned for the next video to learn how to add rows of beads.